Welcome, everyone. My name is Peter Baldus. I'm the current chair of the Painting and Printmaking Department. And tonight it's my pleasure to welcome back Joe Cortina to VCU. As someone who gives a lot of tours to prospective art students and their parents, I can't tell you how much time I spend reassuring them that, yes, there really are fulfilling careers waiting for their children after receiving a painting and printmaking degree. What these parents and sometimes even our students don't immediately recognize is that the value of their education extends far beyond putting paint on canvas or ink on paper. Through rigorous critique, writing, collaborative projects, our students develop exceptional communication skills. They learn to articulate complex ideas, receive constructive feedback, and refine their vision, skills that are invaluable in virtually any professional setting. And while they're mastering techniques and mediums, they're simultaneously discovering unique niches and applications for their ideas that they may have never considered. Joe Cortina's remarkable career perfectly illustrates this kind of journey. After studying painting and printmaking right here at VCU, Joe's creative path took an unexpected turn when he landed his first job as a film director at WTVR Channel 6 in Richmond. This one opportunity became the springboard to an impressive career as a director for NBC News and NBC Sports, where his work has earned him 5 National Emmy Awards. In 1999, Joe founded Cortina Productions, a media design company specializing in museum exhibits. As the guiding creative force behind the company, Joe's developed immersive and interactive installations for prestigious institutions including the International Spy Museum, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the Muhammad Ali Center, 7 presidential libraries, the National Museum of American History, the Museum of Science and Industry, and the Canada's Sports Hall of Fame, and many, many more. I would wager that everyone in this room has seen some of Joe's work in one place or another. Under his leadership, Cortina Productions has received more than 60 industry awards and has revolutionized digital storytelling. Throughout his professional career, Joe's remained a practicing artist, working in painting, drawing, sculpture, and digital media. Drawing from his background in animation and film, where images are created at 24, 30, 60 frames per second, his paintings aim to encapsulate that kinetic energy within one single frame. The Washington Post has described his exhibited works as both painterly and precise, reflecting his unique ability to blend technical expertise with artistic vision. His contributions to communications were recognized when he was inducted into the Virginia Communication Hall of Fame in 2018, a testament to the far-reaching impact of his creative work that began in the very students where our students work today. Tonight, we're fortunate to have Joe share his insights from his impressive career journey. Please join me in welcoming back to VCU, Joe Cortina.
Thank you, Peter. So it's great to be here. Next year will be 50 years since I graduated. And so, as you can see, from my earliest memories, I've always drawn and painted. And I was so thrilled to get to VCU and study painting. And I never expected how this would turn out. So this was one of the first large oil paintings I did at VCU, and that was done with a live model in the studio. I'm not sure whether you guys still do that or not, but it was amazing to be able to paint from a live model. And that painting was 6 feet by 4 feet, which was huge at the time, and sold that to make rent, and wish I knew where it was now. The picture on the upper right was my studio back then, which is now the Quirk Hotel, and had a space that was by 50 by 50 with 20-foot ceilings for $50 a month. And there's some of the paintings from that era. And like every painting student graduating from college, I needed to pay my mortgage or pay my rent. So I literally went down Broad Street from the hardware store to the Sears to the paint store and ended up at Channel 6. And they gave me a part-time job as a 16 millimeter film editor and also sweeping the floor and any odd jobs they could find. And also at the same time, I did anything I could to make some extra money. So on the right is a portrait I did of for a bank president, an oil portrait, and then the sign out front of a store that was on Broad Street at the time. And so any odd job, even at when I finally got the job at Channel 6, I even did some courtroom sketch drawings there. Uh, at VC at TBR Channel 6, I met for the first time Jesse Vaughn, who would become a collaborator and one of my dearest friends for the next 40 years. And so it became really obvious immediately, as soon as I started working in my career, of the things that painting department and studying painting had taught me that were remarkable. First of all, when you make a piece of art, you try, right? You look at what are the materials I have? What's the goal I'm trying to do? And you care about it. As soon as I got in the workforce, I realized that half the people aren't like that. That they, oh, I didn't care about that today. I didn't really try. But that was not something that was in my vocabulary at the time. Everything I did it consciously and deliberately. And that really shined in the workforce. And that was a remarkable thing. Also, you know, the cameras at the time, you had to color correct manually. There was no automatic color, and the camera control had a red, green, and blue button on it. And I knew how to mix color. So when the anchor was off color, I could go up there and mix color and make them skin right. You know, I studied chiaroscuro in art history, and so I felt confident getting a ladder, going up on a ladder and adjusting the light and to get the lighting for the um, talent looking right. And within a year at Channel 6, I was directing programs and directing local news, and which was remarkable. The other thing that was really, I learned really quick about art school that really, really helped me was after 4 years of creating work, putting it up for critiques, having everybody critique it, shit on it, you know, like it, hate it, you got thick skin and you got resilient. And in the workforce, a lot of people weren't like that. They would, you know, have a bad day or something and would pout and would, you know, come back the next day with that same attitude. But as an artist, you learned that you just came back and you worked on the next piece. You came back and you put what you had into it, and it was just really unique to know that that was something that directly came from art school that I had never suspected. So then I had a couple of pieces in a gallery in New York, and that's a close-up of it. It was acrylic paint and rice flour to get those textures on a board. And the night of the opening in New York was a huge blizzard. And you can see the attendance of the opening night show, which will become a recurring theme that we could talk about later. After we worked at Channel 6 for a few years, Jesse Vaughn went up to New York, to Washington, and got a job at NBC News. And he got me a job there, and then also got another VCU grad, Jeffrey Blunt, a job there, who had also become a collaborator for the next 40 years, and also another VCU alum. And throughout my career, I've had a chance to collaborate with a lot of VCU talent, and it's been amazing. So we worked on shows, Nightly News, Today's Show, Meet the Press, and really got to learn from seasoned directors of really what that kind of art form was like. Then I got a chance to, after a few years, to do some work for the NBA, which was an amazing opportunity, and got to uh, design and direct a show called Inside Stuff. And that launched right at the time the NBA was super hot. When the Dream Team, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and I'll show you just a little clip. Uh, 30 years later, in 2024, heard from the president of the NBA that the Basketball Hall of Fame just gave it the Kurt Gowdy Award as one of the most transformative sports television shows in history. I'll show you just a little clip of what that is.
Action. Mic check. Ouch.
Check this out. When the NBA on NBC began its run at the start of the 1990-91 season, it wasn't just about the games. It also marked the debut of NBA Inside Stuff.
From day one, we knew this was going to be a hot show.
3, 2, 1.
Showtime.
We had fashion, we had music, we had celebrities.
I want the inside stuff.
I want the inside stuff.
No one said no to a feature with inside stuff.
Bellissima. It's good having guests like you on my show.
And that show caught the eye of Dick Ebersol, the president of NBC Sports. And they were about to launch the Olympics in Barcelona in 1992. And what he loved about that show was it didn't look like a traditional sports broadcast. So he called me up to New York and asked me if I wanted to be the coordinating director of the Olympics in Barcelona. And I had never done anything like that, didn't know what I was doing. So I said yes. Another recurring theme. And so I immediately contacted Jesse and asked him to come help me. And Jesse directed 16 original music videos, one for each night of the Olympics. And then I also brought in Jeremy Conway, who had graduated in the theater department here from VCU. And we scoured Barcelona. Because of my art history background, I knew about the art in Barcelona. Miro, Gaudi, Picasso, and went there and took pictures of tiles and textures and paintings and architecture. And so immediately we started to build a look that felt authentic to Barcelona and did not look like Monday Night Football or some kind of sports broadcast. We hired Catalan designers. We hired and got Catalan furniture. We worked with artists from Barcelona and really created a unique look for that broadcast that changed the Olympics from then on as far as how they were presented as far as a broadcast. Here's just a few of the examples of the graphics that we created at the time that really felt like Spain and felt like some Barcelona at the time. Then I took a little detour, another crazy risk. So a good friend of mine, Doug Michaels, who was one of the original members of the art group Ant Farm that had done Cadillac Ranch that you see there, in a fellowship at MIT, had developed an idea for a spacecraft with dolphins. And his concept was weightlessness enhances creativity. So him and I created, it was right at the time when CD-ROM games first took off. There was Myst and there was other things that were just starting to be created. So we got a deal with a interactive company that had a deal with 20th Century Fox for distribution to create a video game called Blue Star, which was the name of his craft. We created some amazing images and some crazy animations, and it starred LeVar Burton. And when we got about 80% complete with the game, the company went bankrupt. So on to the next challenge. So during those years in television, here are some of the paintings that I was creating at the time. And so it really felt like the scan lines and things and the kind of vocabulary from television and from that digital look started to really make their way into my paintings. Now, the scan lines and those things, I still, as even from the early work, loved texture. So those were applied very thick as thick paint And these are all oil on canvas, some of them very large. So I could see how my work in the digital media was really starting to affect how I saw things and how I was painting. And it really felt like I was trying to kind of capture that energy of the motion picture and kind of hold it down to a frame. Uh, when I got back from the Olympics, I had the opportunity to work with an amazing museum designer named Ralph Applebaum, who has done some of the most amazing museums in the world, and also the producer Jack Hurley. We worked with to create all the media and technology for the museum. About 7 weeks out before opening, uh, the museum came to me and said the filmmaker, that the Academy Award winning documentary filmmaker who was making the opening film for the museum, went to them and said he wasn't going to finish on time. And the museum came to me and said, could you make something in 7 weeks as the opening for the museum? So you got to work with some very talented people, and we created a film called What's News. The opening went fantastic. The next day in the Washington Post, above the fold on the style section, it said, an amazing film renewed my belief in journalism, directed by the director that didn't deliver the film. Next day, or 2 days later, in page 3, in tiny, tiny print, was the correction. Couple of days later, I got a letter from that director thanking me for giving him credit for the film. So then in 1999, I decided to create a production company. And my father gave me advice of when I had told him I was going to start a company. And he said, uh, don't mess with the IRS, was his first advice. And the second was, know what you don't know. So I immediately hired Amy Maddox, who had a background in interactive education, and my brother Jim Cortina had a background in finance. And we started to build a company. I continued to direct television for several years, and Amy and Jim went out and scoured the country, introducing us to architects and exhibit designers and all the people in kind of location-based media to really start to build that business. And one of the first projects that really kind of put us on the map was the Muhammad Ali Center. And we did things that really hadn't been done in museums before. At the time, museum media was very, very rudimentary. And, often there would be a cardboard sign that said, this isn't working today, or they were running power under the carpets, and it just was not good. With the background in broadcast television works every day. There's redundant systems. There's never a day where you're not going to run commercials. So we understood how to build a system to be able to create large media and have it work. One of the most interesting things about that not only was to spend time with Muhammad Ali, but also we created projections and things that hadn't been done before. So if you look at confidence, that is a compound curve structure, almost similar to the shape of a Richard Serra sculpture that we projected on. And there was really no way to kind of geometry correct those images. So we had to go back and forth, put up grids, send images back to the animators, and really work back and forth to kind of create that. There was an artist at the time, Leroy Neiman, who had done a lot of drawings and paintings at ringside of Muhammad Ali fights. So we were able to work with him to utilize those and animate those. And then what you see on the lower left image is we projected those on a canvas of a actual size boxing ring. And we really were able to create a film that had both a very, very artistic feel and also told his story. When we were just the day before open, we were working on getting everything installed, and I get a call from the curator to come to the Confidence Gallery, and so went in there, and there was Herbie Hancock standing with her. And we had done all these really cool things with audio, and I thought he was going to say something about it. He said, "How did you project on a curve?" That's the only thing he wanted to know. And one of the other big challenges about this was we didn't tell the story in a chronological fashion. We told his story thematically. Confidence, courage, spirituality, persistence. And we used themes to tell different aspects of his life, which was a really unique way as opposed to most museums at the time that told their stories chronologically. Another really, really unique museum that we did was it's a permanent exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago called Science Storms, where it was really one of the first examples of combining digital technology and physical artifacts together. So we created very unique things. The foreground disc is a physical disc that you could turn with controls to see how avalanches happen, and then films about that. There was a tornado that was built inside that space there. You could see the sun reflecting on different areas. All of those things had a combined both physical element that you could touch and also a digital element, which was at the time a huge challenge. This was simply the largest project we've ever done. This was the 100th anniversary celebration for the Montreal Canadiens. And what you're seeing is spandex stretched over the seats of the Montreal Canadiens hockey stadium with 22 super large projectors up in the rafters. And those are the guests on the what would normally be the ice surface for this dinner. That was set up and taken down in one day. Another real honor was to work with Lonnie Bunch, who's now secretary of the Smithsonian, on the creation of the African American History and Culture Museum. The bottom image is a 360-degree film that we did on the African American culture. We did a lot of different kinds of interactives, and the one on the upper right was an interactive experience on the Green Book, where you had to make it from Chicago to Alabama using the Green Book as your guide. Here's just an example of how that plays out in the space. And if you've been there, you can see the headdress on that sculpture in the center and where the inspiration for the architecture came from. This is an exhibit that's currently at the George Washington's Mount Vernon, which is a decision-making game of things both George Washington had to decide on when he was a general and also when he was a president. And what was unique about this is take some historical elements like that and turn them into a game, and to make decisions that were life and death and turn them into something that a younger audience could understand and also could participate in, and made it sticky that the children left that understanding those kinds of decisions and also what it meant to have the responsibility of the presidency. This is at the American Revolution at Yorktown. It's a 4D theater, so it has scent, wind, smoke, and butt kickers in the seats that rumble. And it's also a 180-degree screen, which is very challenging to create both animation and live action for. So I went back and to the old film format Cinerama, if anybody remembers that. And if you can see the camera set up, it's 3 cameras, 1 center and 2 cross shooting. And so we filmed all the live action that way and then stitched that together. So in the theater, you've got a 180-degree screen that shows you what it was like to be in the Battle of Yorktown. This is something that's now traveling the world, an immersive experience called Beyond King Tut. And this was created for the 100th anniversary of the discovery of King Tut's tomb. 20-foot walls, 20 feet high by 100 feet wide, and to really show the art of Tutankhamun. This piece was amazing to work on. This is all of the artwork and all of the paintings from the walls of his tomb come to life to tell you the stories of what those things mean and how they were meant to craft the path for Tutankhamun to make it through the afterlife. The center sarcophagus would take you through a sequence to show you each of the layers of his tomb and how they were created and what they meant. This is Pacific Visions in Long Beach, California. That's a 130-foot screen, 30 feet high, and a large disc that raises out of the floor, and this is all projected. This was a huge challenge because the screen, when we created, was 10K resolution, and there was really no cameras that would shoot 10,000 pixels. So we had to do a lot of challenges to both film that live action and also create animation for that, as well as the storytelling to really make the audience care about what's happening to our oceans. This one I stuck in there. This is just because I love it, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. This is currently open. We've created 2 new sections of Air and Space, so the redo downtown, and we're working on a 3rd section. And what you're seeing is a globe and using live data projected to show you the changes in the planet, and that you control that through the digital screens. Working in this kind of field, you need to be up on technology. So I was reading about a company that was just starting to make transparent LCD screens where black was opaque and white was transparent. So I immediately bought a couple and created a sculpture with that, creating animations for it of sketches and drawings that I had done. And then so that's what you're seeing on the surface, and then both found and painted objects that I created. So this is really where both the technology, my practice, and the working with this kind of equipment really starts to merge. And this is a new exhibit at the International Spy Museum, and you could see now, after I learned that stuff, we started to incorporate transparent screens now into some of our exhibitry. So they have a letter that George Washington wrote to launch the first civilian spy ring in the United States during the Revolutionary War, and they had it in a little case, and everyone walked by it. Nobody really paid much attention to it because it was static. So they asked us to create something that would draw attention and tell that unique story. So what we decided to do is basically make a jewel case out of transparent monitors so you can see the letter in the center. And what we did, projecting on the walls and also the towers of transparent screens, of let that story explode off the page and really to tell what that meant and how that was achieved. So, preparing for a major solo show of my paintings, and just as COVID hit. So you can see the attendance at the opening of the show. This contained both paintings and digital sculptures, similar to what you saw with the transparent monitors. So this is a wonderful exhibit that if you're ever in New Orleans, you should try to see. It's right at the base of Canal Street on the Mississippi, and we created a wonderful animated film, an immersive experience that tells the history of the food, music, and art of New Orleans. And you can see a series of transparent monitors on the lower image as well. So we really started to incorporate that, and it's really as much of kind of theater design as it is set design and museum design, because you could walk among it and tell stories that way. And that's one of the most unique things about telling stories in museums, because a film, has a beginning, a middle, and end. But the way we tell stories, we do it over space and time. So you come into a space and you hear part of the story. That has to take you to another area. And as you learn, from working on television and films, you create a physical place where somebody laughs, and you move to another space where somebody cries, and you have to dissect that story that usually takes place on one screen and explode that and into an area where you're telling that story over space and time. So it's a wonderful challenge, and it's very, very rewarding when you can get an audience to kind of understand and move through the space at the pace that you'd hope them to, and to be able to perceive the story that way. Right across the street from the Vue Orleans is the Audubon Aquarium and Insectarium. And this is a really, really fun piece where we use gesture cameras to realize where the audience is. And as you approach the wall, in this case, the monarch butterflies come to you and follow you and kind of collect and fly around you. And at night, it's fireflies. And so it's just really, really fun, informative. Again, we try to make the content sticky, but not take the fun out of it. This is a new museum in Charleston, South Carolina, right on the spot where the slave trade occurred, called the International African American Museum. And this basically tells the story of the transatlantic passage. What's unique about this and is that the museum designers incorporated contemporary art in among the historical exhibits. So it's not, when only putting a piece of art that was created during that time period, so that they incorporate and they open the story in a way, both visually. So it's not just you have to, get through the history to get to anything that feels more contemporary. So it becomes a really unique experience. It becomes filled with art, and it just really enhances the storytelling. This is I created some pieces I created for um, at the vault, which is Capital One Hall, and this actually had an opening and it was attended by people. And these are digital pieces, both using transparent screens and large projections, and floor projections and wall projections, and using my original animation and drawings. And here's another piece that was created using, so this is a transparent monitor mounted over top of a curved computer monitor, and then with original animations on both layers. But the way that visually works is it creates both a physical 3 dimension, but also it feels like it's 10 layers deep. So it's really unique for the eye, and feels much more deep than it actually is. And it's the combination of both the color, the animation. As you could see, as it evolves, human form starts to take place and then dissolves away. But it has a very unique both use of technology and also original animation. Here's paintings during this time period. And you can see that the capturing the motion is still there, but the kind of path for that has changed to be something that's much more active. And again, the motion is very thick, textured paint that tries to hold that action and tries to hold that motion down. This is just a really fun project that we did, and this is currently traveling the world. Harry Potter, the exhibition, and it was just fun to work with both the animation companies. We created all these animations ourselves, but to work with the film studios to make sure that our animation was up to snuff for them. And it's an interactive experience that's in, I think, 4 or 5 U.S. cities and traveling the globe. And this is one of our newest experiences. This is a new attraction called the People's House, and it's an immersive experience that's actually directly across from the White House on 17th in Pennsylvania. And so this is an immersive room that's projected with rooms from the White House. We did LiDAR scans of all of the objects in the rooms and then recreated these rooms. You could touch on any of the objects when you go up to the walls, and they'll explode out from the walls and to give you the historical significance. And it's a free experience, and it's really kind of a culmination of all the technology, augmented reality, immersive experiences, touch, Pepper's Ghosts, all the different techniques we've used throughout history to tell these stories. And this is a kind of like a dollhouse of all the rooms in the White House with transparent monitors and different storytellings. And you could activate any of the rooms and kind of get a history of that room and storytelling. And they haven't mentioned anything about the East Wing yet. Now, I was going to play you a little kind of sizzle reel for the company, and then uh, just to get a little bit of volume in here. So I just want to reiterate a couple of things. First, the way I approached all of this work is the exact same way I approach my paintings, and I've always I it's one practice. I look at it all as my art, and I approach it that way. And that I learned at VCU. I I look at what are the materials I have, what's the time I have to make that in, what's the goal, and what do I want to achieve. And if you take your practice of your art and you apply that to your career, whatever it becomes, uh, you will it will flourish. The other thing is don't hesitate to take risks. Now, you get used to that in art school. A lot of people in the outside world and in the work world, that's very scary. Uh, Use that, what you're learning in art school as far as taking risk, and apply that once you're done, and your career will be incredibly enjoyable. Also, take your critiques serious, learn from them. That kind of resilience that you get from critique will really help you in your career. And not necessarily just if somebody doesn't like it or not, but if someone doesn't understand what it was you were trying to achieve, extract from that what that was. Was that the way you approached it? Was it your execution? Was it just their understanding, what they brought to that? So embrace the critiques that you're getting for each piece you get. Learn from that, use that, get resilience, and then use that in your career. It will reward you over and over again. I can't tell you how much my art education made all of this possible. There is no way I would have achieved any of this without a painting and printmaking degree, believe it or not. And so, Peter, you get that question a lot. I'm an example of that. That is a huge benefit of having a fine arts education. I'm starting to now work towards backing out of the company, and we've got 5 new owners. One of them, who's the head of our programming department that programs all of our interactives, was a fine art major at VCU. Our director of photography was an art major at VCU. There is so many people that I've collaborated over my career. Jesse and Jeff are 2 of them for 40 years. I forgot to mention the African American History and Culture and Muhammad Ali Center. Jeffrey Blunt, who first started working with at NBC, wrote all those scripts and now has completed several novels. And so those collaborations that you make at VCU and those lessons you learn from fine art school will pay off 100-fold. And so I just want to thank Dee Higginbotham, Peter, thank you, John, Sandy, Sarah, James. I want to thank Dabney, my wife, and my family, and my friends who are here, and Carla and Kelly, and everybody who's been so helpful with this. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.
You did a little Q&A. Turn this on. Thank you. That was amazing. My first question is, would you like to come teach an interdisciplinary art installation course at VCU? Okay, we'll get working on that.
Okay.
But sort of related to that, could you talk about like what a team and how many people work on like a large project with you, and what are some of their roles?
So when we first started, obviously it was 3 of us, and I think the current we have 75 people that work in the company, and that's writers, producers, programmers, animators, editors. And when we first started, as we grew, we farmed out certain aspects of it, but the control and the mentoring, we really brought those people in. And so on a large museum project that'll take maybe sometimes 2 years or more, um, uh, it could be up to 20 people, maybe more at any given time. And one of the things that also is really rewarding about it is that The curators do not mess around. If we don't know the content, you cannot go into the Smithsonian and meet about an exhibit and not know what you're talking about. So we have to study. So each year we have to learn a different topic and learn it for real to face Smithsonian curators or, the Museum of Science and Industry, that project. Leon Letterman, Nobel laureate, critiqued our film on atomic energy. And so we had to we had to know that.
Yeah. So that could lead to your next career of curating here, starting your own museum.
Oh yeah. No.
We can open it up to questions from y'all, or I have more. Does anybody have anything they wanted to ask? Yeah. Somebody coming down.
Oh, hey Joe, you always been my guy. What advice would you give students in regards to expanding their canvas? You start out painting on a canvas, but your canvas became other areas of creativity, and that requires openness. So, what advice do you give students about that type of openness?
Stay curious. Investigate other things than just the discipline that you are currently working in. Now, I see that happening. The last graduate student show here at the ICA had a lot of projection, a lot of media, a lot of interactivity, as well as traditional painting. So expand on that. I would suggest every art student take a computer science course or just something to get familiar with how those things are put together so that when you're in a dialogue with another collaborator that you understand that, but not just visual technique, also the things that we've had to learn is how to communicate with architects or exhibit designers or different people in different technologies. So um, be curious about as much as you can, even if it's not directly related to your discipline.
Right. This last semester, I've been told many students who are interested in video or storytelling with their work, expanding it, to just sign out a projector or sign out 3 projectors and go to our big room in the department on a Saturday night and see what happens. And it's been actually really productive. They've come up with some new ideas and new directions for their work.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Um, another thing that you kind of learn in art school is that you don't make excuses of what materials you have to make something. If you have a piece of cardboard and paints, you can make a brilliant piece of art. Um, if you have a phone, you can make a brilliant film. You don't have to, oh, wait, have to wait until I have a 4K camera, or I have to wait to do this until I have the technology. Um, all the materials you need are available to you to make whatever it is that you want. And so don't hesitate. It's a perfect example. Take out projectors, put them on the walls, put them on the ceiling, and see what you can make.
That I'm waiting for this to happen, or I'm waiting to get this thing. I hear
Yes.
all the time, and it's hard to convince them to just go work with what you have
Yes,
right now.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, and I heard you on a podcast, and you mentioned that the customer is not always right. Could you talk about an example where you sort of pushed back and how that helped a project?
Yeah, that happens a lot. A curator or an exhibit designer or something has an idea of how to tell the story, and it's a bad idea. And with our experience, we know that that's not going to resonate with the audience the way that they want it to. Um, but you can't necessarily just tell them that straight out that their idea sucks and that we shouldn't do it that way. So often we'll. Um, example of a film, we'll do a rough cut of their version, and then we'll do a rough cut of our version, and we'll show them back to back. And so we're showing them that we didn't just ignore what they had to say. We embraced it, we tried to solve it, and this is what we found worked better. You have to, so it's really about showing respect when you're pushing back, and you can get their attention. Also, if you do it with enough knowledge of the subject and understanding what they try to achieve. So the way we do that is with the whoever the client is, we set goals, and we set 3 goals. This is what you want the audience to take away. These are the 3 things that you want them to leave with, both kind of an emotional reaction, an intellectual reaction, and, a learning area. And so every meeting will start with those goals. So there's never worry about kind of scope creep or that we're not listening. So once everybody's decided on what the goals of something are, then you can keep them listening and much more open to pushback.
Joe, I have a question here from our webinar.
Okay.
Mike Gilbert says, what was your first and earliest memory growing up where you knew you might be in love with shapes, forms, colors, and art?
Gosh, I don't really. For as long as I remember, I've drawn, I've painted, I've made things. Um, God, I've made 1,000 things with cardboard and tape growing up, and so I was constantly doing that, and I'm still doing that. Um, and so I don't have a specific time. It's just a continuous memory. Question there.
Ooh. Towards the beginning, especially, you seemed so willing to like take risks and just like go into whatever field you felt like you could make it in or people like guided you towards. How did you end up sticking with like this more nonfiction, non-narrative based work?
I think it was as much of kind of opportunity as anything else. It was kind of opportunities was given and opportunities that kind of I made for myself. Nonfiction always felt good to me as authentic. It wasn't, you know, selling something or it always felt like there was truth in it. And especially within the museum field, the curators are sincere. They want an honest story presented, and that just felt right. The question in the back.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question about like motivation. Like, how do you motivate yourself? I mean, you've been doing art your entire life, so how do you keep motivated? And on top of that, like artist block as well as networking. So I kind of have two separate questions.
Okay. Um, Artist block is just a matter of discipline. For me anyway. So if I go in and start to make something, even if I, not necessarily feeling it, it's the old, I guess, the 10,000 hours adage. If you just keep making something and keep making something and keep trying things and not give up, that those um, motivations will happen. If you just sit there and wait for the muse to hit, it's a very elusive. But it's really about discipline more than it is, you know, uh, talent or inspiration, at least for me. The networking, um, again, I think it's curiosity and just every opportunity to have to meet someone in a different field or be curious about someone's discipline or the art they're making. You could see a lot of influence in that work of sculpture and film and painting that show up in different areas. And that's really a result of not only embracing art history and love of art, but also, just collaboration. And that's a thing, actually, I think television was really fundamental at. When you're directing a television show, you have 30 or 40 people or however the crew is, and everyone has to do everything at the exact right time, or it shows up on the air. So there's no somebody second guessing or something. You have to be able to control the environment so that everyone is working towards the same goal. And those skills kind of translated as a business owner, um, and as a networker, in just that the ability to um, convince people that, is this what we want to achieve? And then, get the ability to craft that.
Hey, Joe. I have a question kind of building off of that on more along lines of I love seeing art students and their perseverance. And so I'm kind of curious about adversary for you. What are times that you might have heard no, that you had to be persistent, or were there like bids that you wanted to secure and maybe didn't get, that you really missed an opportunity that you really wanted for Cortina to be working on?
Yeah, that happens all the time, every day. So yeah, you work on a request for proposal for a large museum, and you put 100 hours into a proposal, and then you get outbid or underbid on the price. And you have a team that's devastated because they put their heart and soul and their ideas and their creatives in there. And the way I looked at it is, um, if they didn't want us, or either because they didn't like our creative, or that somebody else was going to get them a better price or whatever, that's fine. There's other work out there. You know, and so I just let it go. And I think that's a resilience that also, not only from critique from art school, but also from television. Because when you work in live television, every day you have to come clean, with a clean slate, because you make a mistake on the air, and and it's terrible, and everybody's getting yelled at, and it's horrible scene in the control room. And then the next day you're about to do another live television show. You have to let that go. You have to come back. And in television, and I think Justin could probably second this, some of the people that made it weren't necessarily the most talented. They were the most resilient, that they were willing to come the next day with a clean slate, with bringing their minds, that bringing their discipline, bringing their creativity, and starting again. And that's something that not only a discipline of an artist that you get, because you have to be able to, if you're working on a piece and you overwork a painting, you have to be able to rip that canvas off and throw it away and restretch it and start again. You can't be precious. And so with the experience of not only art education, but making art. And also, I think live television gave me the tools to be able to kind of maneuver through that, and also help the teams of peoples that we work with to get over those kinds of things.
I think we have time for one more question. Does anybody in the audience have one?
We have a couple here on our webinar also. Um, could you speak about the changes you've seen in museum visitor expectations over the years, and how your practice has evolved to incorporate these changes?
Well, we got really lucky in our timing. So really, when we just kind of started the company and really started to work in location-based and media, was right when the curators realized you couldn't get a kid to look at an artifact or read a plaque. So the timing was perfect. And so that was as much luck as anything else, but it was also um, the things that were happening around with video games and theme parks and things, where they were really those techniques and things, we were able to bring, especially with background in television, to the content, serious content, and be able to open that up and make that much stickier for younger audiences. So a lot of it, I think, was luck in our timing, but it was also kind of being adventurous in offering different ideas to curators. Again, when we first started, they were very afraid. There was a lot of talk about Disneyfying museums. And that was really a negative term that scared a lot of curators away from the use of kind of adventurous media. But through showing them examples and kind of selling them on that and convincing them that the younger audiences would kind of be able to retain the content that way, um, really helped. An example I can give is one museum we worked on, a history museum, and the curator didn't want any technology that wasn't from that time period. So until we got to a point where there was radio, then we could put sound. And when there was film, we could put moving pictures. And so the audience walked right by and got to the place where there was media. And so they immediately saw the purity of their concept didn't translate to the learning of their audience. So I think those kinds of experiences that curators were having was able to kind of open up that.
And my final one here is anyone who has been in a creative space with Joe has witnessed magic happening. You start a meeting with a blank idea, or someone is struggling with where to go with an idea. Wheels are turning for folks, but it always seemed to be Joe's instant creative thoughts on design or story that gets the project started. His creative reservoir is the most amazing part of this to me. Joe, how much of that is innate? And how much is what you got from your classes at BCU? This is from Jeffrey Blount.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks, Jeff. That, that's more than I can weigh in on. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I just think it's the curiosity. And one thing that I think it was Buckminster Fuller kind of taught was that if you come to something with empathy for whether it's the topic, whether it's the people, whether it's the art, then creative ideas flow.
I have a bonus question.
Okay.
What is your favorite video resolution?
Well, now we just shot something last week in 12K. So there's a brand new camera out that's 12,000 resolution, and it's stunning. And so we shot when the 4K cameras first came out, the first red one, we were filming the Montreal Canadiens' 100th anniversary hockey game. And the camera was flawed where if allowed volume, it would vibrate the drive and it would stop. So the Montreal Canadiens score a goal in the 100th anniversary game, and the crowd goes crazy and the camera stops. So there's always risk with technology. But so the higher the resolution, the better. But it's really, you have to, that's only good for a big screen and not for a small screen. So it does a couple of the recent sculptures that I just made that I'll have on display in a couple of months in a gallery in DC. I have little 7-inch monitors that are flexible. So I bend them into shapes and then run animations on them. And those, I love those, but they're as fragile as can be. As I was making the sculpture, I already broke two and had to get several more. So I kind of love all resolution, but here's an example. So if you look at the photograph of the moon landing, that's, as low a resolution as you could possibly get, but it contains the drama. So the resolution isn't the trick, it's what do you make with that?
Thanks for sharing your work and your career with us. It's really inspiring. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.